All right. Good morning, GPAR. Welcome to today's workshop. We're happy to see so many of you with us today, and I'm sure we'll have a few more people jumping in as we get moving along. But welcome to our workshop today. We're really happy to welcome one of our affiliate members to do a presentation with us. But before we get into today's workshop, let's look ahead to Friday. So Friday, 9 o'clock, we will welcome Trent Pettis for his agreement of sale workshop. That will be a 3-hour workshop. It's for the newbie and the grizzled veteran. There's lots of things that you can learn. And one of the cool things there is we all learn from each other. So Trent really likes for it to be an engaging conversation in which he is breaking down the agreement of sale, and then the attendees jump in and talk about some of the experiences that they've had or some questions they may have. So it's definitely experiential learning in a way, and it's learning from your peers. So we hope you'll join us. That's Friday, 9 o'clock. We'll send out some more email messages related to that. Looking ahead in a couple of weeks, we're going to have Dr. Kevin Gillen join us with his latest economic update related to the Philadelphia housing market. So keep an eye on your inbox for communication from the association related to that. Again, Dr. Kevin Gillen will be joining us, I believe it's the second week of April. And that's always really good content. Kevin is very dialed in on what's happening in the Philadelphia marketplace. So great opportunity to learn and get yourself ready for that spring market. So let's get to today. We're so happy to have with us Bill McCormack from CK Capital Management. Bill is one of our affiliate members, and we put a little message out to our affiliates and said, hey, would you be willing to go ahead and talk about some of the stuff that you do in your subject matter expertise field, if you will? And Bill said, hey, I love the opportunity to go ahead and talk with GPAR. So we're grateful for Bill and his affiliate membership, but also too, we're grateful for his willingness to give some insights and share some viewpoints in this area of the market, and is short sales. So with that, good morning, Bill. Welcome.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it. And thanks everyone for attending today. Um, we reached out to Donna about a month or so back and saying, hey, we're starting to see an increase in foreclosure activity. We're starting to see an increase in distressed property owners in Philadelphia and the surrounding areas. And I said, would this be a topic you think would be timely for the members? And thankfully she said yes. So we put together this overview for you today. And as Matt said, the trainer that's coming in the next, I believe it's tomorrow or Friday, let's learn from each other. So we welcome open discussion, because obviously there's a lot of folks on the call today, a lot of different experiences. So if we're on a topic and you have a comment or a question, what I'm going to suggest, because it's really hard to monitor chat and things like that, just unmute yourself, announce your name, and announce your question, okay, and then mute yourself again. All right, because that way we can learn from each other, particularly as it gets to transactional experiences. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about growing your real estate business, marketing short sale properties. And excuse me, the market is definitely changing. I'm sure there's a number of you that are on this Zoom today that, if you entered the market in the last 4 years, 5 years, you probably have not worked with the distressed property owner because property values were going up, right? Interest rates were low. We have a supply and demand issue. Well, what we're starting to experience now is kind of the hangover effect from COVID. All right. And we're going to talk about some things that happen in the mortgage industry that help struggling homeowners. But now that the pandemic's over, we're finding a number of clients that took advantage of some of the government programs, and they have second mortgages and they have balloon payments on the back of their mortgages for some of the pandemic payment holiday programs. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, but a little bit about me. My wife Denise and I started CK Capital Management close to 23 years ago. It'll be 23, I think 24 in June. Our offices are in Wilmington, Delaware, and we've served the greater Philadelphia market during that time period. I personally have a financial services background. I worked for Commerce Bank before it became TD Bank. I was always a capital equipment finance person, and my wife was actually in the healthcare industry. So she's compassionate. She has a lot of empathy for the clients that we work with, because quite frankly, a lot of our clients are struggling in their lives as to why they can't afford their mortgage payment anymore. So this is all that we do as a company. All right. We work with realtors like yourself all over the country and helping them with their clients that need to sell their property due to some type of financial hardship where they don't have any equity. Um, just kind of at a high level, because we always get asked, well, what do you do for me? What do you do for my clients? And if you think about short sale, all right, the offer that you are signing between a buyer and seller is less than what is owed. So because of that, the mortgage lender has to approve that homeowner. That homeowner could have one mortgage, they could have two mortgages. They could have City of Philadelphia license and inspection liens against their property. They could have IRS liens against the property. Could have Commonwealth of PA liens against the property. What we do is we work with you as a listing agent, and also we're brought in on the buy side. But what we do is we take that offer and we take it to Bank of America, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan Chase, for an example, and we negotiate the offer amount with the lender, getting the lender to approve less than what's owed. And that enables the homeowner to walk away, all right, and get the realtors on both sides paid their full commission. All right. So we basically work with you, for you, and for your client and for the buyers to get the property successfully to the table. Anybody has more detailed questions, you can message me or call me after the class. So, topics. All right. How do you differentiate yourself in today's market? I said earlier that, we know the market's changing. We see average days on market starting to tick up. We see in Bright properties that are put back on the market for transactions that fell apart. And we are seeing price reductions, price improvements as well. And typically what we see when the market starts to change and there is, financial difficulty for folks. And again, we've got the economy, we've got the job, we've got the inflation. So we have all sorts of different people in different stages of life that are starting to struggle. But typically what you see is it starts in the cities where you see the distress, all right, and then it makes its way out to the suburbs. So right now, a lot of our business that we do locally is in the Philadelphia and the surrounding markets, okay? So we want to help you try and identify short sale opportunities. How do you help a homeowner that is facing foreclosure possibly, and they need to get out from under the debt, all right? And then how do you qualify that homeowner? How do they qualify with JP Morgan Chase for a short sale? All right. And then once you have that listing client, how do you market the property? What are the disclosures that you have to put in place? All right, to alert a buyer and buyer's agent. All right. What things do you need to ask of the homeowner? All right, to make sure that they have free and marketable clear title. Okay. We're also going to talk about some common mistakes that we see agents make when they are handling short sales. Because again, these are distressed properties, all right? And if the homeowner isn't paying a mortgage, what else aren't they paying, okay? And then we want to talk to you a little bit about it, how you protect you and your sellers in the sales contract. I said earlier that these offers have to be presented to the mortgage company for approval. So that means the offers are subject to third-party lender approval. Okay. And then lastly, we're going to go over some tips for the MLS disclosures. Okay. So those are the topics right now. We're about 9:15. I think we're going to get through everything by about 10 o'clock and let you all get on with your day. Okay. So, how do you differentiate yourselves? Right now, today, all right, there's more competition than ever because of the lack of inventory. So, we're all out there trying to help homeowners find homeowners that either want to sell or buyers, all right, that want to buy. All right. Well, the distressed market over the last, 4 or 5 years, because property values were going like this, there really wasn't a lot of folks out there were struggling because they were getting equity. They were building equity because of the property values and the lack of inventory. Okay. However, I said earlier that we're seeing the hangover effect from the pandemic. And during the pandemic, show of hands, anybody that's on the Zoom today, did you work with a client that got into a bidding situation where they overpaid above ask price, right? Did any of you work with a home buyer that paid above ask? All right. We saw it all the time. Interest rates were so low, all right, it was almost like free money. So buyers were willing to overpay. Okay. And what we're seeing right now is those buyers, that if they have a life event, maybe they're getting divorced or maybe they lost their job. Well, if they bought a house in 2023 or 22, let's say 23, and they paid 400, the property was listed at 350, and they had a 3.5 interest rate and paid 400. Well, what we're seeing now is that new buyer that's coming in, all right, won't pay 400 because the interest rate is now at a 6.5 or a 7. So that monthly payment has almost doubled. So we're starting to see people that bought in that 2-year window at the height of the market with low interest rates. Now property values are starting to moderate, but interest rates have doubled, and all of a sudden they can't sell it what they bought it for. Okay. So with that, all right, the clients that we work with you is they're facing losing their home. This is not a good time for them. All right. Stress levels are very high. All right. Some major life event that was not planned is causing the financial hardship. Okay. So we're going to walk you through what options homeowners may have explored prior to finding you to list their property. But I will tell you this, okay? Short sale by definition, and it's short of a full payoff, okay? But it is, and we're going to go through the benefits in a little bit, but I will guarantee you that if you help a homeowner out of this situation, all right, and it cleans up their credit and they can avoid foreclosure, they can become a new homeowner typically in about 2.5 to 3 years. So if you help this client, I guarantee you they will remember you when it's time to go buy again, because you're going to help them out of a very difficult financial situation. Okay. Um, and then on the buy side, we're going to talk about how to utilize Bright to look for short sale listings. And I know there's probably a lot of you on the Zoom today that work with investors. Okay, investors have the same problem Joe and Sue homeowner have, home buyer. All right, lack of inventory. Okay, so we're going to help you kind of look at, how can you potentially search for these properties for your investor buyers. Okay. I typically like to start with market trends just to give everybody a sense for what's the world look like today. Okay. And the company that I use is RealtyTrack. It's a database company. You can go on there and it will actually, it's almost like a Zillow or a Realtor.com. You can go in and you can plug in different zip codes or counties. It'll actually give you pictures of photos of properties that are active in foreclosure, right? Um, like any data website, you have to take it with a grain of salt, right? So don't assume everything's 100% accurate. But in Philadelphia County, all right, Realty Track right now, and I'll read it for you because it's kind of small on the screen. All right. Right now, the county has 2,835 foreclosures. Okay. 102 bank owned properties where the bank's already foreclosed, and another 659 headed for auction. Okay. Well, folks, 2,800 foreclosures. Okay. That means folks, homeowners can't pay their mortgage. They're in some form of foreclosure. Okay. But here's the good news. These folks are listing opportunities for you. All right. Because if they can't afford their mortgage anymore, they have to figure out, how can I save my home? All right. Well, the reality is, most times when folks have equity, they just go, well, you know what, I'll go refinance and I'll lower my interest rate and I can take some equity out of my home to make those past due payments. Well, guess what? If you locked in at a 3.5 and a 4, you're not refinancing into a 6.5, 7. All right. So a lot of homeowners, that option is gone for them. There's the opportunity for you. I say to realtors all the time, just because someone can't afford their mortgage anymore does not mean they're my client as a short sale. If the homeowner has equity, they can sell the property, even if they're actively in foreclosure, and walk away with their own equity. Okay. So my point in saying that is, there's plenty of distressed property owners out there that you're going to be able to help, and you don't need to go to the bank for approval. As long as the bank's getting paid in full, you don't have to engage a company like mine, and you don't have to engage the bank. Okay. Now, Delaware County, I'm sure some of you work the surrounding areas. Delaware County right now has 730 foreclosures. Okay. So, like I said, Philadelphia, a lot more dense population. All right. It always starts in the cities and then makes its way out to the suburbs. So, Delaware County, 730 foreclosures. Montgomery County has 423 foreclosures. Okay. So, just those three counties, all right, 3,000 foreclosures, right? I'm sure the market could use 3,000 more homes because it'll help, inventory. But the reality is, a lot of these folks will file bankruptcy, they'll hire an attorney, they'll borrow from a relative to bring the payments current. But there's going to be a majority that don't have the ability to do that. And they're going to need help if they can no longer afford the payments on the mortgage. Okay. So jumping along. So the statistics, I just want to kind of give you a flavor for what we're starting to see. Okay. So by definition, short sale, all that means is that there's not enough equity to pay off the mortgage in full. Right. Sometimes there's two mortgages. I said earlier, sometimes there's IRS liens, sometimes they're Commonwealth of PA liens for not paying your taxes. So basically, in order to sell the property, obviously you need to have free and clear title, right? If you don't have enough equity to pay off all the debts, all right, all the liens, then it is potentially a short sale, all right? But because of that, you have to present the offer to the mortgage lender because they're the ones that are taking the loss. Okay. So they're the ones that have to say, yes, you know what? We understand, Joe and Sue homeowner, that you're struggling financially. We would rather do a short sale versus foreclose and take the property back into our inventory. All right. So yeah, we will work out an opportunity for us to be made as whole as much as we can. And for that, we'll allow you to walk away with minimal impact on your credit score, and basically give you the ability to become a new buyer in a shorter time period. So short simply means short of a full payoff. Okay. A lot of folks think short means, oh, I'm going to write an offer and the bank's going to make a decision on it in a week. All right. Anybody that's ever been involved in short sales know they do take time because you have a lot of moving parts. Okay. So, how do I qualify a homeowner? All right. Um, Two things. It's real simple. Okay. Is the market value of your property, all right, less than what you can sell your home for and pay off your debt in full? Okay. And does the homeowner have some type of financial hardship? All right. This is the key thing. All right. What has changed in my life as a homeowner from when I got approved for the mortgage? What's changed that I can no longer afford the mortgage, right? Most lenders, most mortgage lenders, all right, have forms that a buyer, or excuse me, forms that a homeowner fills out to apply for a short sale, right? And they say, okay, what's going on? Tell us your income, tell us your expenses, and check the box. What's your hardship? These are the most common hardships that we're going to review for you in a second. All right, but before I do that, all right, so if they don't have equity and there's financial hardship, okay, well, how do you, as a realtor, determine are they short or not, right? It's a simple calculation. Show of hands, how many of you do net sheets when you meet with your client, when you meet with your listings and show them how much money they're going to walk away with? Okay. Well, it's the same type of calculation. You're going to determine what's market value. Okay. You're going to pull comps. You're going to look at similar properties in the neighborhood, on the street, on the block that recently sold of similar size and amenities. All right. And you're going to say, okay, Joe and Sue homeowner, I think I can sell your house for 195. And after we deduct, the closing fees, you're looking at about $179,000. All right. Well, then Joe and Sue homeowners say, well, that's a problem because I owe 230. So now there's a shortfall. Okay. So it's not rocket science. It's the stuff that you do all day, every day to day. All right. Just because it's a short sale, your role doesn't really change. Okay. Now, the types of financial hardship, the most common is job loss. I've lost my job. I've been downsized. When I got my job, I was working 40 hours a week and 15 hours in overtime. I no longer have that overtime coming to me, and I need to get out from under the property. 2, 3 months behind, and I'm afraid that the bank's going to start foreclosure. Okay, so job loss is the number one reason, all right, or some change in job status. The second most common is divorce. Probably 35% of our clients at CK Capital are divorces, all right? And it's pretty simple. Dual income, all right? And when they split up independently, they can't afford the mortgage and all the living expenses of the family. So divorce is considered a legitimate hardship, okay? Um, Number 3 and 4, death and medical illness. All right, people die, unfortunately, at the height of a market, and people die at the bottom of a market. Okay, happens all the time. So obviously, you have a spouse that passes away, they no longer have that income coming in. The surviving spouse runs through their savings and gets this at some point where they say, I can't afford the mortgage payment anymore. Okay. But while we're talking about death, death does bring opportunity. It sounds kind of morbid, but what we are seeing right now in our market is a huge uptick in estate short sales and reverse mortgage short sales. Okay. Estate short sales. Dad passed away years ago. Mom's been living in the home forever. The house hasn't really been updated. Now the adult children, get involved after mom's passing, and they go through all the papers and they see what mom owes, and they realize that the value of the home, it's fallen into disrepair. So, they're not going to be able to sell mom's house and pay off her mortgage in full. All right. So we are seeing more and more estate short sales. The other area where we're seeing a huge uptick is reverse mortgages. Okay. Mom and dad, all right, tapped into the equity of their home. They took the equity out of their home because what we're seeing is a lot of aging parents are outliving their savings. And they look at their home and they say, you know what? I'm on a fixed income. I've got $200,000 of equity just sitting in this house. I can do a reverse mortgage, take that money out today and live comfortably for the next 10, 15 years and let my kids figure it out when I'm past. Because I will tell you, a lot of adult parents are not going to tell their adult children that they ran out of money and they're struggling financially. All right. So reach out, sphere of influence, reach out to your estate attorneys. Right. We are getting more phone calls from estate attorneys and realtors like yourself that have clients that have done a reverse mortgage. I did a lunch and learn yesterday. All right. There was, I don't know, 10, 12 people in the room, and two of the realtors in the lunch and learn had reverse mortgage opportunities. So don't walk away from them. They're not that difficult to do. Okay. But it's a huge opportunity. So sphere of influence, start reaching out to those estate attorneys. Okay. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with distressed properties, okay, Pennsylvania is known as a judicial state, right? What that means is if Bank of America or Wells Fargo or TD Bank wants to foreclose on a homeowner for non-payment of the mortgage and take the property back, all right, legally they cannot do that until they hire a local attorney. The local attorney goes into the courthouse in Philly. Usually it's the prothonotary office, and they file what's called a lis pendens. That's pending litigation. Okay. Um, and that's when it becomes public record, and that's when the sheriff, the local sheriff, serves papers at the property. They post a big package on the front door about 2, 3 inches thick that says you're active in foreclosure, and they duct tape it to the front door. Or if it's an absentee owner, they send certified mail. Okay. But the good news is that it has to go through the court system, which buys you time and it buys your clients time to actively market the property so they can avoid a sheriff's sale. Foreclosure is simply the legal means that the lender has to go through in Pennsylvania in order to take back the asset, right? The mortgage lender doesn't own the home. The mortgage lender owns the mortgage note. The mortgage note is backed by the asset, the house. Okay. So the end result of foreclosure is that sheriff's sale where the mortgage lender takes the property back and then resells it. Okay. So that process is typically, once it gets into the courts in Pennsylvania, it's about 6 months once that lis pendens filed until there's an actual sheriff's sale. Most lenders won't initiate foreclosure and hire that attorney until a homeowner has missed at least 6 payments. So what we say when we train is typically you're looking at 0 to 12 months from first missed payment to a sheriff's sale. All right. Your opportunity is to identify that homeowner when they first get served papers. Okay. Because that's when they understand that the court is going to take their home if they don't seek alternatives. All right. And that gives you roughly another 5 months to get the property on the market and under contract. Okay. So basically 0 to 12 months. Now, why would a homeowner not just walk away? Well, you know what? I'm frustrated. Let the bank take it back. All right. I don't want to deal with them anymore. Okay. Well, here's reality. Okay. If the lender forecloses, and let's say my mortgage is $250,000. Bank of America forecloses on me. They take that property back at auction. Okay. And my mortgage is 250,000. Well, what they'll do at that point is they put a judgment against me for $250,000. Okay. Once they put that judgment against me, legally, they can use whatever means to get that money back from me, which is basically attaching my wages. Okay. Let's say they take the property back. I owe 250 and they put it on the market as a bank-owned property and they sell it for 200. Okay. Well, now I have a judgment for $50,000. Okay. Well, the reality is, as long as that judgment remains on title, okay, or on the homeowner's credit, excuse me, all right, well, good luck getting a new mortgage for a minimum of 5 to 7 years. Good luck applying for a car loan. If you want to go out and get a Lowe's or Home Depot credit card, having a mortgage foreclosure on your credit is not good. You talk with mortgage lenders all the time. All right. Typically, what we're told is 5 to 7 years for a foreclosure on your credit. Bankruptcy, all right, typically we're told 7 years on your credit. We're going to talk about the timeline for a short sale, all right, and why it's more beneficial. All right. But let's get to one of the primary benefits for that homeowner. When you have a regular sale, all right, out of the proceeds of that sale, the homeowner will pay their customary closing fees, commissions, transfer, title company fees, right? Well, in a short sale, there is no equity, there are no proceeds. So for that, the mortgage lender will pay all of the homeowner's closing fees, which includes both sides of real estate commission. All right. They will pay the seller's portion of the Philly and state transfer tax, and they'll pay the seller's title company fees. So benefit number one for the homeowner is in a short sale. All right, you're not getting any money because you're not paying off the loan in full, but you don't have to write a check for any of your closing fees. That's benefit number one. Benefit number two, all right, the mortgage companies issue an approval letter to that homeowner once the short sale's approved, and it spells out the sales contract price that was agreed to. It spells out those closing fees. But there's language that we want to see in every approval letter. The big lenders, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, TD Bank, the language that I'm going to go over for you, this is boilerplate language that is used in the industry. All right. So here's my approval letter, and it says Bank of America agrees to report your debt to the credit bureaus as settled for less than owed or settled as agreed. Okay. The key word there is settled. All right. It's not as long-term impact on your credit report. All right. And it's not a judgment. Okay. Let's go back to what we just said. Foreclosure, $250,000 mortgage, $250,000 judgment. Attach wages. Short sale, debt reported as settled, no judgment. Okay. So that is huge because the homeowner knows that, hey, you know what? This is kind of like wiping the slate clean for me. Bullet point two there, here's the other benefit. The mortgage companies put in writing that we agree to waive the deficiency balance. We agree to waive the shortfall amount. So that calculation we showed you earlier, where there was a $50,000 shortfall, all right, that's known as forgiven debt. Okay, so the lenders in their approval letter, all right, will say, look, we'll go to the credit bureaus and tell them that your debt's settled, and we're also going to waive that deficiency balance. You don't pay us back. Okay, so the homeowner is sitting there going, okay, if I walk away, let it foreclose, I have a judgment, they can attach my wages, and I can't become a new homeowner, get a new mortgage for 5 to 7 years. If I do the short sale, I don't have to bring any money to the table. They report my debt is settled, no judgment, no collections, and I can just walk away from the shortfall amount. The answer is yes. The analogy I use for homeowners, so look, put all the bad stuff with this mortgage, put it up on a chalkboard. When you go to the settlement table, all right, You walk away, you sign the deed over to a new buyer, you take an eraser on that chalkboard and you wipe it all away because it all goes away. Short sales are not new. I said June will be 24 years for us. Short sales are not new. Okay. The lenders don't want to take these properties back, which is why they offer that as a solution, right? If someone's behind on their mortgage, the lender starts educating them. Have you considered a loan modification? Have you considered a refinance to try and keep the property? If you can't keep the property, consider a short sale. Okay. Now, some folks, all right, have experience with this. Some realtors, maybe some of you on the Zoom today, say, well, they get taxed on forgiven debt. All right, they do. So in the approval letter, it says we will forgive you of the debt, and any forgiven debt must be reported to the IRS, and we issue you, homeowner, a 1099-C. So basically, any forgiven debt can be treated as taxable income by Uncle Sam. Okay. So it's the law that if a mortgage lender or any type of bank forgives someone of a mortgage debt, then they have to basically issue a 1099 for the amount of that forgiven debt. Okay. Now, back in 2007, when the mortgage industry blew up, Congress realized that, you know what? Um, we're making a mortgage problem an IRS problem for the homeowners. So back in 2007, Congress enacted what's called the Mortgage Debt Services Relief Act. It's been renewed every year, and right now it is still valid through the end of 2025. Now, here's how it works. The Mortgage Debt Services Relief Act only applies to primary residents, okay? It doesn't apply to rental properties or second homes, okay? So if I'm Joe and Sue homeowner and I do a short sale and I get a 1099-C for 50 grand, let's say I'm in the 10% tax bracket. Let's use round numbers. 10% of 50 grand, I'd owe Uncle Sam $5,000, okay? However, if it's my primary residence, I've lived in this home 2.5 of the last 5 years, it qualifies as a primary residence. Okay. Well, I have to get an accountant at tax time. I don't want to do it on my own, but get my accountant to say, look, here is my settlement sheet from closing that shows I did a short sale. All right. Here's my short sale approval letter. Okay. And here's my 1099-C. The accountant, all right, can process that, and the homeowner does not have to pay any income tax as long as it's their primary residence. So here are the IRS thresholds. If it's just bill on the mortgage, I don't pay any income tax up to $375,000 of forgiven debt. All right, let me repeat that. I don't pay any income tax up to $375,000 in forgiven debt. That's not sales price. That is the shortfall amount. If it's Bill and my wife on the mortgage, we don't pay any income tax up to $750,000 in forgiven debt. Okay. So this is key. All right. And think about it. Someone that's making 70 grand a year and has to pay income taxes on a $50,000 of forgiven debt. All right. When they never made that money, they didn't have the job to make that money, but they got to pay income tax. All right. So for that homeowner, okay, they pay all my closing fees. They report my debt as settled. They waive the deficiency balance, and I don't have to pay any income tax on it as long as it is my primary residence. Okay. Why would they allow the home to foreclose? Okay. They shouldn't. All right. These are all the benefits. And as you have this knowledge now, all right, again, just a caveat, don't give legal advice and don't give accounting advice. All right. But you have a great tool in your toolbox now that you can help folks out of a very distressed situation with minimal impact on their credit and their finances. Okay. Now, here's a question we always get asked. don't fall into this rabbit hole. All right. And the homeowner says, well, how soon after I do a short sale can I go get a new mortgage? Okay. Refer them to a credit specialist, refer them to a mortgage lender that you know. All right. Don't answer that question. Here's typically what we see after 20 some odd years of doing this. We have enough experience of clients that we've helped that have come back into the market. Most lenders will tell us that because the debt reports is settled with no judgment, they can typically put a client that did a short sale previously into a new mortgage in about 2.5 to 3 years. It takes 2.5 to 3 years for that short sale to cycle off of the credit. Okay. So every once in a while, I'll be consulting with a homeowner with their listing agent, and the homeowner says, "Okay, well, I really want to be a new homeowner again, and I've read a little bit about foreclosures and short sales, and how is this going to impact my credit?" And typically, where I start is this: I say, "Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner. How delinquent are you on your mortgage?" Well, I'm 5 months delinquent. I'm a year delinquent. I'm 2 years delinquent. I'm 3 months delinquent. I said, okay, if you are delinquent, you're already doing damage to your credit report. If you're delinquent, okay, you're already getting 30-day lates on your credit. Once you do the short sale, right? And let's say it's March, where are we at now? March 26th. March 26th, I go to the settlement table and I sell my property as a short sale. Guess what doesn't happen in April? I don't get a 30-day late on my credit score because I no longer own the property and the mortgage is settled. All right. So 30 days after I complete a short sale, all right, the bleeding stops on my credit score. Okay. 90 days later, 90 days, typically 90 days it takes for the lenders to close out the loan. Well, that's when they go to Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion, and they report the debt as settled. Okay. So what happens then? All right. Those of you that know a little bit about credit, all right, two main drivers of your credit score: how you pay your bills, including your mortgage, and your debt to income ratio. Okay. So let's say I do have a $250,000 mortgage. Once I complete the short sale, 90 days later, all right, Bank of America is going to go to 3 credit bureaus and report my debt is settled. That $250,000 debt load comes off of my credit report. Okay. When your debt load goes down, your credit score goes up. So I say to homeowners all the time, you're looking at basically a 30 to 90-day window after you do a short sale where your credit score should start to go up. All right. The caveat, though, is that last bullet point. You're not going to be able to go get a new mortgage for about 2.5 to 3 years. All right. Doing a short sale typically won't prohibit a home buyer or a home seller from getting a car loan. It won't prohibit them from getting a credit card because the debt reports as settled for less than owed. Okay. So those are the real benefits to that homeowner. And I say all the time when I'm consulting with a seller trying to determine, do they want to do a short sale? First question I ask is, do you want to be a new homeowner again? Well, yes, I do. Okay. Do you want to be a new homeowner in 5 to 7 years, or do you want to be a new homeowner in 2.5 to 3 years? All right. What's the answer? 2.5 to 3 years. Okay. That's why you do not want to do let the home foreclose. And quite frankly, beyond the credit score impact is, do you want the lender to potentially come after and start attaching your wages? Okay. All right. What is your role in a short sale? Typically, as I said earlier, your job doesn't change. Okay. You list the property, you market it. You have to market it as a short sale. We'll talk about that in a little bit later. You're going to sign a listing agreement with the homeowner. You're going to put it in bright. Okay. When a buyer comes in, you're going to get buyer proof of funds if they're cash. You're going to get a buyer mortgage pre-qual. Okay. And then the mortgage lender, a lot of them now have short sale addendums that are arm's length affidavits. So you just want to make sure that they get executed. But the question that we get asked by realtors all the time is, well, is the bank going to tell me what to list the home for? Right? The answer is no. The bank is not going to tell you what to list the home for. They look for you as the local market expert to determine what's fair market value. All right. On a traditional listing, you pull comps, right? And you say, look, the last three properties that sold on this block in this neighborhood on this street sold between 285,000 and 300. I think we're going to put your house on the market at 300 and let's see what we get. Okay. It doesn't matter what that homeowner owes. If market value is 300 and that homeowner owes 500 on their mortgage, all right, don't list the home at 500. List it at what you believe to be market value given the condition of the property. Here's why. The mortgage lender, as part of their due diligence on a short sale, once an offer is in hand and they do the financial review of the seller, they will order their own appraisal. Okay. So they hire their own appraiser. The appraiser goes out, pulls the same comps you pulled, hopefully, and says, you know what? Yep, the property's under contract at 290 and we appraise it at 300. We can go ahead and approve that short sale. All right. Don't get focused on what is owed, because think about this. If the lender forecloses and they take that property back at a sheriff's auction, if market value is only 300, all right, they're not going to be able to sell it for 500 to pay off to pay off the loan in full. Okay. So that's why they look to you to list it at what you believe to be fair market value. Just don't get distracted by what's owed. And that happens a lot. Okay. Now, a couple of things. When you're marketing a short sale property, all right, we already talked about doing the competitive market analysis. Okay. The other thing is, and this is where a lot of mistakes are made. We're in the trust business as in real estate. You ask the homeowner questions and they give you the answers. Homeowner, fill out the property disclosures to the best of your ability. Okay. However, if a homeowner is delinquent on a mortgage, all right, what else are they paying? Okay. First thing we recommend is when you do that net sheet, don't, number one, take the homeowner's word for what they owe. Number two, don't go by a mortgage statement. You want to get a mortgage payoff quote. The mortgage payoff quote will have any past due, late charges, escrow fees for taxes that were being paid on the homeowner's behalf. All right. There's a reason why title companies get authorized by a seller when they're representing a buyer for closing and get a payoff quote. They don't take the seller's word for it. They don't look at an old mortgage statement. They say, I'm going to get a payoff quote good for 30 days. All right. Make sure that you know exactly what's owed. Okay. When you ask the homeowner, hey, are there one mortgage? Are there two mortgages? Are there any other liens against the property that you're aware of? Okay. If they say they're not sure, then what we recommend is get a present owner search run. It's also known as a M&J search. You don't need a full history of the property. All you want to know is, are there any mortgages or judgments against the individuals that live in the property? All right. And that'll pick up if they have a second mortgage they weren't aware of. That'll pick up if there's a credit card judgment that attaches. That'll pick up, is there an IRS lien that, they forgot about that was filed 7 years ago? Okay. And you have to go in this mindset that not only do you have to protect your seller when you're listing a distressed property, you have to protect yourself, right? You don't want a transaction to go sideways because they forgot to tell you that their old business partner sued them 5 years ago, and there's an $80,000 judgment on title. All right. So protect yourself there. Run an M&J search. Okay. One little caveat is most lenders, I talked earlier about the timeline, 0 to 12 months, zero, first missed payment to a sheriff's sale. Most lenders, all right, will postpone a sheriff's sale as long as they have an offer in hand 37 days prior to a scheduled sheriff's sale. If you get contacted by a client that you've spoken to before and they call and they say, hey, I'm ready to sell my property. I know we spoke last year. I have a sheriff's sale scheduled in 3 weeks. All right. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your time. Okay. Now, how do you protect your homeowner? Right. Public remarks section of Bright. All right. You want to alert that it is a short sale. You know, you can go on Bright and you can check the box short sale, yes or no. You want to include as is language. All right. These are distressed properties. Homeowners, if they can't pay their mortgage, they can't pay for new carpet and paint. The lender, the mortgage lender, doesn't own the property, so they're not making any repairs. So alert that buyer that this is an as is sale. All right. Do your inspections, do your due diligence. If you want to walk from the contract, okay, if you want to walk from the contract due to the condition of the property, all right, do it as normal. You know, if it's not stated within 10 days of contract execution. All right. Some buyers agents will say, well, we're not going to do inspections until after bank approval. Well, once the bank approves it, that's the approved price. There's no negotiating there. Okay. If that buyer comes in and they really like the property and they say, look, I'm going to write an offer at $200,000. And in the first 10 days, they go and they do their inspections and say, you know what, I still like the property, but I don't want it at 200. I want it at 190. Well, it's easy early on in the process to do a price change addendum, okay, to keep the buyer engaged. All right. And then move through because at that move through the process because at that point the lender's not even done an appraisal yet. So the time for negotiating is in the beginning, not after bank approval. Okay. The other thing you want to include there is subject to third-party lender approval. Let a buyer know that, hey, just because a buyer and seller are signing a contract, that contract is technically not binding until we receive that approval from Bank of America or Wells Fargo. Okay. Pennsylvania Association of Realtors has a short sale addendum. We highly recommend that if you are writing on a short sale or listing a short sale, include the short sale addendum to your contract. All right. It was created for a reason. All right. It covers buyers and sellers, it covers realtors. Everybody that's involved knows that this is a distressed property, it's an as is sale, and it's subject to bank approval. All right. It was created to protect everybody in the transaction by Pennsylvania Association of Realtors. So we highly suggest using that. Okay. Now, excuse me. Um, some additional remarks. Okay. Let's say a house, you know, the water and the electric has been turned off. Okay. The homeowner doesn't have any money to turn them back on. Right. If that is the case, you have to alert a buyer and a buyer's agent that, hey, if utilities need to be on for inspection purposes, that's going to be up to the buyer to do that. The buyer's going to have to put the service on in their name for a day. All right. Excuse me. If the house has been winterized, if the house has been vacant, all right, the lender is not going to pay to have someone come out and de-winterize the property. Okay. So again, just go in with your eyes wide open. If you have a homeowner that says, look, I'm getting ready to move and I want to turn everything off, at that point say, look, at least until we can find a buyer and get it under contract, leave the electric and leave the water on. All right. And then once we get the short sale approved and once they do their inspections, turn it off. It just makes the house more marketable, number one. All right. But number two, it just doesn't put that onus on the buyer to have to go through those gyrations, right? We want to make the process as easy as possible for that buyer and quite frankly for the seller too. Okay. All right. Coming down to closing time here. Fees a mortgage company won't pay. All right. They're not going to pay cable and electric. Okay. If it's a lienable item, all right, PGW, if there is a lien against the property, all right, the short sale lenders will typically pay a lien like that. They will pay if there's a property tax, all right? If there's municipal, like a L&I inspection lien, for, the grounds have trash on it or whatever. Anything that looks like a taxable lien, the lenders will pay. They won't pay personal debt like IRS or state of or Commonwealth of PA. All right. But those are all negotiable. Okay. So don't walk away from a transaction just because there might be some other liens on it. Okay. That's where, quite frankly, a company like ours can help. Okay. So, some common mistakes to avoid: get the payoff statement. Don't go buy a mortgage statement. All right. Beware of title issues. Again, if they're not paying the mortgage, what else aren't they paying? If you're listing a property, when the bank hires that appraiser, they go in and out of these properties. I'm telling you, they're in there like 5 minutes. Take a picture from the front, they take a picture from the side and the rear. They're in and out of the property in 5 minutes and take a couple other pictures. They go home at night, they go into Bright and they pull comps. They assume everything is in working order. Okay. If there's damage to the property, repairs needed, we recommend that the listing agent meet the appraiser at the property and say, yep, there's a water leak here. The HVAC is beyond its useful life. Okay. There's some windows in the back that don't work. Point out the repairs, because that's the opportunity to help the appraiser understand the condition of the property. If you're working with an investor buyer and the house is in need of a lot of repairs, all right, what we recommend is you have that investor buyer get a repair estimate. Has to be from a licensed contractor, license number on the estimate, and you submit that repair estimate with the offer to justify why they're offering what the price is versus what market value is, because the condition of it is not market value. All right. So that's definitely worth its weight to get that. Okay. All right. I said I would have you out of here within an hour, and we are at that hour now. My contact information is on here. Our offices are in Wilmington, Delaware. But like I said, we service the entire Philly area. If you have questions on any transactions that you're involved in, it's a no charge. Call us. We have this opportunity. Not sure if they're a short sale or not. You're going to start to see more of these. All right. And I will tell you, if you can help one of these struggling homeowners, you'll have a client for a long time, any questions before we close out?
Hey, Bill, there was one in the chat, and
Okay.
perhaps you answered that. And it's how common is it for a buyer using a mortgage to actually close on a property in a city like Philadelphia rather than a cash investor?
Yeah, you know what? That's a really good question. And a lot of investor buyers out there, and they say, well, I've got a cash offer and I can close in 2 weeks. All right. The mortgage lender does not care. All right. The mortgage lender wants highest and best. Right. So if I have a property and I'm listed at 200 and I have a mortgage buyer, and it's not where it's a damaged property where an FHA buyer may have a problem getting a mortgage, right? So let's say it's $200,000 and I've got a buyer, it's listed at 200, and I got a mortgage buyer that comes in and says, hey, look, I'll offer 190. All right. I'm putting 20% down. Once the bank approves it, it'll take me 30 days, to get my mortgage finalized. And then you have the investor buyer that comes in and says, well, I need to make money. I'll offer 150 cash and I can close in 2 weeks. The short sale lender will take the $190,000 all day long. The short sale lender is looking at their net, right? What's the gross after I pay expenses net? They're not going to do a giveaway for 150,000 if they can get 190. So we have all types of buyers. We have mortgage buyers, we have cash buyers. Hard money, I typically stay away from that. But as long as they have a verifiable account, it's really about what's the highest and best offer. Don't shy away because you have a mortgage buyer.
All right, guys. There we go. We're getting some great comments in here about how good the content of today's conversation was. So again, let's thank Bill. Bill, thank you for your time, your expertise. And please, there's his contact information right there up on the screen. Feel free to reach out to him. As he said, complimentary responses. So free is for me. And this is really good. This is great stuff, Bill. Thanks again for you being an affiliate member, and thanks for sharing your expertise and knowledge with us today. And thank you, members, for joining us. Remember, Friday, Trent Pettis. We'd love to see you guys there. Take care, everybody.
I
Have a great
appreciate
day.
it. Thanks, Matt. Thanks everybody for coming out. Take care.